All right, welcome back. This is chapter 2, second part of chapter 4, continuing with behavior and attitudes. Okay, in the part 1, we would have covered the first two questions, and now we're going to be looking at why does our behavior affect our attitudes. So we will spend the second half of this chapter understanding these three theories as they help us to understand the why of the phenomenon. So bluntly put, we all care on some level about what other people think of us. Now, good impressions are helpful, whether that's socially or even financially, just straight across the board. No one wants to be labeled or to feel like a fool. And that's what happens when we say something and don't actually believe it, or when we do something and don't believe it. If we are called out, someone is like, really? That's what you're saying? That's what you think? That can really impact our sense of self because it taints how others view us. Somebody's like, oh, she's a hypocrite. Because, no one really wants to be called a hypocrite. So then we adjust, or we pretend to adjust our attitude so that it's consistent with our behaviors. And this is really where we see self-presentation. It is about managing how people see or think of us. Now, on the other end, we have dissonance theory. And it is one of my favorites. I reference this so many times. So beyond just saving face amongst others, like we do with impression management, this cognitive dissonance and dissonance theory speak to how we save face with ourselves. Leon Festinger is the theorist behind this, and the idea is that pretty much our attitudes change because we are motivated to remain consistent in our thoughts. So when we have inconsistencies, we also generally experience discomfort. There is a tension, per se. We're feeling some kind of way. Bahamians would say your conscience killing you. You're like, oh, I can't really, I feel bad. My conscience killing me. And, well, to actually change the words that we have said or to adjust our behavior may make us look bad. So instead, what we do is we adjust the story that we tell ourselves. So we now adjust our beliefs. So again, like impression and self-presentation, where we adjust our beliefs to match what we have presented so that people think highly of us. Here, we are changing our beliefs so that our beliefs can be on the same page, so we're not experiencing that sense of tension. How else do we reduce dissonance? Well, we may only read or follow the people and sources that support our view. I know some of my American friends would never watch CNN or certain shows on a particular news station because of the political spin. Some can also argue that there's a particular daily newspaper locally that may also have an inclination to paint one party more positively than the other. Beyond that, this ties in with when we spoke about last week with confirmation bias, where we are basically actively sticking with the people, the places, and the things that support our position. So no one is going out of their way to find information that just does not support. And that's selective exposure. This is where we are now looking for information and only receiving information that is going to support our view so that we no longer, so it decreases the dissonance, that feeling that, oh. The text reviews the research that supports insufficient justification. And basically, this is where the external justification for why our actions are inconsistent with our beliefs, and how we reduce the tension, which is through adjustment of our beliefs. That may have been confusing, so walk with me to the next slide. Okay. So insufficient justification. This is a snapshot of the data from one of the research studies. So dissonance theory predicts that when our actions are not fully explained by external rewards or coercion, we will experience dissonance. So we we feel we have tension, you know, and this dissonance can be reduced by us believing in what we have done. So the study goes as follows. You participate in the study. Study is pretty mundane, it's boring, nothing exciting about it. As you're walking out, you are told that, oh my goodness, the person who's supposed to be um, like the MC for the study, you know, like guiding people through, is sick, can't make it, and you just need somebody to welcome the people as they come. The only thing is that you have to tell the people that this study is super exciting and it's good. Even if the person has heard otherwise, you have to convince them that this study is worth it and they should be a part of it. So essentially, you're lying. Some people did not have to lie. So, you know, they participated, they did what it was, they shared whatever it was they wanted to share. Other people had to lie and they were given $20 for it. And then others had to lie and was given $1 for it. Wait, did y'all just yawn? Anyway, let me stay focused. Those who were only paid $1 experienced high dissonance, while those who were paid $20 to lie experienced less dissonance. Why? Why do you think? Well, what this is telling us is that $1 just wasn't enough to justify a person lying to strangers about something like this. Like it wasn't worth it. So the $20, at least you feel like, well, okay, if I got $20 for every person I talked to, or for every time an experiment happens, you know, it's like, well, okay, I'm being paid to do this. So I kind of could, you know, forget about, you know, I could justify why I'm lying because I was paid to lie. This was a part of the experiment. But $1, and I lying for $1, like that ain't even a payment. That's just like, that's not even a tip. And so we can't justify why we would actually lie for that. And so to reduce the tension, because now we have these feelings of dissonance, we then would have to actually change our beliefs about the study. And so you'd find the person who was paid $1, like I don't know if you could see, but you can reference your book. It says, well, maybe the study was kind of interesting. Maybe, you know, and we find ourselves starting to believe the lie that we're saying, also that we aren't actually accepting that we are lying to ourselves. Hopefully this is making sense. Okay, so again, still on the self-justification and cognitive dissonance. You can also experience dissonance when you make important decisions. Most of you may be too young to have had to make major life decisions like getting a mortgage or getting married, but there are other important decisions that you may have been faced with that caused you some angst. You have to decide, and there's no way to know which one is right. And if you're the type of person who always needs to make the right decision, then you may experience even more dissonance than others. So, for example, I'm buying a car. How do I choose which car? I want to make sure that if I'm going to take all my coins that I just saved up to buy this car, that I'm buying one that's going to last, that's going to be pretty much everything that I need. Like, I don't want it lands in Nassau and then it broke down, or come to find out that it's one that gets stolen easily, you know, those kinds of things. So all of this is weighing at it. So am I going to go the Toyota or am I going to go the Nissan? And this is taking all of my savings. So I have to make sure that I'm picking the right one. And so once you make this decision, whether it's a Toyota or the Nissan, you'll sometimes still kind of feel weird, right? And so to reduce this feeling, that dissonance feeling, we then have to upgrade the option that we chose and downgrade the alternative. So you now will find everything that's not right with the one you didn't choose. So that helps to bolster your confidence in what you did choose. And then you also focus on the good of the one that you did choose. Oh, this blue is perfect with I love driving a powder blue car. Oh, look how cute the rounded back is compared to that one with the boxy back. oh, this one here has, gas mileage that's slightly better than that. So, every coin counts, even though it's only $2 cheaper on the gas tank, that's still $2 that I have in my pocket. And you just go through and you just find everything that's good about it just to and this is making yourself feel better. So this is how you can live with your decision. And now, while this this kind of upgrading the chosen alternative helps us to live with ourselves, it also fuels um, overconfidence. And so what we find is that this deciding becomes believing effect, as Myers and Twain refer to it, can really create a space that breeds this overconfidence, because now you're not only just talking about the decision you made and it being good, but now this is the best car ever and everybody should get this car. And you just now number one fan, supporter, whatever it is, advocate for whatever this decision was that you made. Because again, this is like, I just made it. I got to feel good about this. So everybody else got to feel good and know how amazing this particular one is. Okay, this brings us to self-perception theory, which is the final of the three theories. And this one is actually really simple. If we don't know what we believe, we look at what we do, and we draw conclusions about our attitudes from our behaviors. So motion, our actual activity, triggers our emotions. Put on a happy face, and we may feel happier, especially if the previous feeling, like the sadness, wasn't something that was significant. You may also find this interesting to learn, but rewarding people to do something that they already enjoy may actually lead them to attribute their response or action to the reward. And subsequently, again, interesting, this undermines the self perception that the behavior was because they liked it. So, on the flip side, an unanticipated reward does not diminish this intrinsic interest, but the over-justification effect is about this offer that comes before the action, and it comes in a way that makes you feel like you are being controlled. And so if I'm going to go to Ranfully Home twice a week, and I'm being paid each time $100 for when I go, $100 for an hour, I no longer may feel like, even though I may have enjoyed it beforehand, I may lose the joy of it, because now, wow, it's kind of like, am I doing this just because I'm like getting paid so much? And then you don't feel like, and I know y'all are like, what? I can feel good about it. But it's the thing where it's something that you enjoy doing. And so, yeah, you don't mind being paid, but it's kind of like there's something when and, you know, I, some of you may argue it, and it may only come to the point when you actually experience it. But when you enjoy doing stuff, you don't have to be like overcompensated. Like, it is an over justification, and it makes you feel like you lose some of the meaning of the work that you do, because it's like, wow, I'm being paid so much to come here when I really um, shouldn't have to. I should be able to do this on my own, kind of thing. All right, now from your text again, I use certain figures because I find them to be helpful. So we pull them out from the text. This one here, we're comparing the three theories, and looking at the why do actions affect attitudes, and comparing the three of them. So from your text, we see the three theories. Self-presentation has to do with how others see us. So I'm smoking. Oh, I must look cool smoking. So therefore, smoking is good because it makes me look good to others. Self-justification. Well, is smoking really bad? Like, who said that? Don't I have like a couple other people who smoke and are still alive? And then there's self-perception. I'm smoking again. This is like the third time for the day, so I must just like the thing, and this must be okay. Because if I'm doing it, then it must be okay. All right. When we talked about self-perception, we discussed internal versus external rewards. And here we are again. Remember when I talked about the over-justification effect? So enjoyable activities is right there. There's no external reward. The self-perception is, I do this because I like it. And so we are motivated intrinsically. When we get an external reward, that $100 an hour for going to the Ranfully Home, self-perception is, well, if I'm receiving this amount of money for doing it, I must be doing this because I'm being paid to, even though I may like doing it anyway. And so now it takes away from the meaning for it for me, and I'm now extrinsically motivated. And your text actually has a really good kind of a fable about it, with the old guy who didn't like the kids making noise on his corner, and he started paying them to play, and then he decreased the pay each day until the offer that he gave to them, they were like, psh, we can't come out and play for that little bit of money. And so thereby he saved himself the headache of the noise from having them by paying them for something that they already did, and it took the value from them. So now it was almost like, no, we ain't playing just because we want to play. We playing because you paying us, and if you ain't paying us enough money, then we ain't gonna bother to come out. And that's really what happens there. So we have to be careful when we're motivating people that we're not paying too much, because that can undermine their sense of self. And we all have to get some value from what we do, and experience meaning, and that is helpful to our sense of self. Okay, so now let's compare these theories. Self-presentation theory explains why our actions might only seem to affect our attitudes. Assumptions of dissonance theory and self-perception theory, though, explain why our actions genuinely affect our attitudes. So dissonance theory, we justify our behavior to reduce our internal discomfort, our dissonance. Self-perception theory, we observe our behavior and then make reasonable inferences about our attitudes. But there is an apparent contradiction between the two theories, because it illustrates the human element in scientific theorizing. Because, it's like, do they really all work together? Does one not do a good job of explaining others? And they for sure don't complement each other. So, we have that. But they are three theories that have withstood many years in terms of review and research, and are still useful for individuals, for us understanding how our actions come to dictate is such a strong word, but influence our beliefs. Now, dissonance theory actually wins of the three, and it's on really one account, and that is having attitude and behavior disagree does seem to produce arousal. So we have found in studies that we can measure and detect increased perspiration and heart rate when it comes to instances where dissonance is increased. All right. And finally, I should say now, and then finally, dissonance theory does not really explain the attitude changes that we have when there's no dissonance. And it definitely doesn't do a good job explaining what happens with the over-justification effect. So the one that where you paid too much money, or you paid, and so it takes the value of being intrinsically motivated to you. Yeah. And when we think about self-perception, it does explain how we form attitudes, because as we act and reflect, we develop more readily accessible attitudes to guide future behavior. So, these last three slides have been kind of looking at the three theories and how they measure up to one another, and how helpful they are in terms of us really understanding. And you'll see they each have their flaws and their limitations, but they still are helpful to understand, because, again, we look at how we interact and engage. These things help us to understand what it is we do and why, and also what others do and why. All right, and that is it. Hopefully, this was helpful for you making sense of the three theories, and really understanding how and why attitudes follow behaviors rather than what we would come to expect, which is it actually determining behaviors. Okay, so that is it for chapter 4.